Ah, yes, the honing of the Princeton stone I did for Devonian up there. Steps and wall hangers, what, the inch and a half, 4x8s, 200 grit on the walls, something for the steps. They had to have drip edges in them, and pretty good stuff.
But there was an even more heretical branch of physics that began to grow in momentum mid-century. One that went a bit farther than Wheeler, although he did actively entertain it at times. This is the notoriously murky field of parapsychology, or the study of mind-matter interactions.
The mind is no longer limited by the parameters of the body. The person's consciousness and awareness is able to transcend space and time and describe what is going on hundreds or thousands of miles away, or hours or days in the future.
If you believe the findings of parapsychology, maybe the mind is collapsing Schrödinger's wave equation. Despite the modern stigma around studying this stuff now, it was popping up at many elite universities across the United States. Duke, Stanford, Washington University at St. Louis, even Princeton, all had vital parapsychology departments. A friend of mine who will remain anonymous, but now runs a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund, happened to help run that lab at Princeton. It was called the Princeton Engineering Anomalous Research Lab, and he was an expert in one of its staple experiments, the random event generator. Take a well-calibrated device that produces binary outputs based on conventionally thought of as random processes in quantum mechanics. For example, radioactive isotope decay, photon interference, electron tunneling. All of these things have a known statistical distribution.
And so if you imagine you have a wheel that's spinning. It's like a roulette wheel, let's call it. You either have a black marker or a white marker. And so this wheel, it's spinning, spinning, spinning. When the radioactive particle decays, it stops the wheel.
So basically, you've created this perfect digital coin flip. By tying a digital coin flip to a random quantum mechanical process, we are guaranteeing even distribution between ones and zeros over a long enough timescale. Finally, you bring an observer present to see the ones and zeros output on the screen.
Hey, Jesse, how you doing?
Good, how are you doing? Thanks
Excellent.
for having me.
Come on in.
All right, let's do it. The observer comes in with an intention. They're trying to skew the output on the screen towards either ones or zeros.
I can see you're already trying to influence, aren't you?
Yeah, should we all try?
Ready?
You'd expect the observer not to matter at all, for the output to be evenly distributed between ones and zeros with an expected standard deviation, no matter who is present, when or where the experiment is done. But my friend, who helped run this Princeton lab, has a ton of corroborated evidence showing that there is a skewing effect, and that an observer who comes in with the intention of ones, or another observer with the intention of zeros, can often achieve a skewing towards those outputs in a statistically significant way.
To the extent that one can summarize, what we find is that the human mind and the information processing machines seem to be entering into some sort of a dialogue which influences both the machine and the human mind that is interacting with it.
These experimental trials are very well run, and they adhere to strict scientific protocols. And trust me, I've thrown the kitchen sink of skepticism at it with him. Survivorship bias, p-hacking, file drawer issues, all your typical issues with experimental protocols and data. He has pretty solid responses to all of these.
If you look at it as a sort of a social process in science, like if you look at it as a social political process where establishment means that a large cohort of people agree with you, I would say it was never established. It was always very rejected. If you say established means, did you run a well-controlled experiment that got a result at the level, or multiple well-controlled experiments that got a result at the level that, for example, would allow them to say that a new particle exists in physics or something like that, then absolutely.
I did do an episode with him, and maybe when the world is ready, I'll drop it. But